Boeing was once America's pride, a name trusted by the military, astronauts, and millions of passengers. But by 2013, the US government itself had stopped flying certain Boeing planes. Why? Because cracks had begun to show, not just in the metal but in the mindset. When Boeing shook hands with McDonnell Douglas, it didn't just sign a merger, it signed away decades of engineering legacy. What followed were crashes, cover-ups, and a culture collapse. So today we ask, did Boeing forget how to fly safely, or did it just stop caring? Hi, I'm Khatija and you're watching the Free Press Journal. Today's video is not just a timeline, it's a wake-up call. So we'll dive into Boeing's incredible rise and the brilliance it once stood for, the culture shift after the McDonnell merger, a series of incidents that weren't just technical, they were systematic. And finally, we'll ask, in the light of the Air India crash, can we still believe the human error theory? Let's get started. Now let's rewind to the early 20th century. 1916, a man named William E. Boeing creates the Pacific Aero Products Co. By 1934, it becomes Boeing Airplane Company, and by the 1960s, it's simply the Boeing Company. But Boeing was never simple, it was genius. They were the pioneers of all-metal aircraft. They built the monomoll, sleek, fast, years ahead of its time. They made the Model 247 the first modern airliner, then the YB-9, an all-metal bomber, and of course the 747, the queen of the skies, a global icon. By the mid-1900s, Boeing wasn't just an aviation giant, it was a symbol of American trust, engineering and innovation. They built jets, military, helicopters, missiles, satellites, and even wind turbines. But everything changed in 1997. Now, talking about the merger that changed everything. Boeing merged with McDonnell, another aviation giant, especially in the defense sector. But this wasn't a normal merger, this was a quiet takeover. McDonnell executives began taking over Boeing's leadership. Suddenly, Boeing wasn't run by engineers anymore. First, it was run by accountants and shareholders. Second, the culture flipped. Third, engineering took a back seat. Fourth, margins came first and people came last. Even the New York Times warned at the time the full impact of this merger may take years to know. Turns out they were right, just too right. Now talking about the beginning of the Boeing's decline. Instead of using their massive cash reserves to innovate new planes, Boeing bought back its own stock, spending over $10 billion to inflate its market value. This move, analysts say, sabotaged long-term safety for short-term profit. Meanwhile, planes still had to be built, but faster, cheaper, corners were cut, budgets slashed. And then came the 737 MAX. In a rush to beat Airbus, Boeing created the MAX, a new plane on an old frame. Instead of redesigning, they just added bigger engines, which changed the balance of the plane. So to fix that, they coded a software patch called MCAS, a system that would push the nose down if the plane sensed a stall. But here's the problem, they didn't tell the pilots. First, no new simulator training, and second, no proper documentation. Some pilots didn't even know MCAs existed, and then disaster struck. Lion Air Flight 610, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 both crashed within 5 months of each other. 346 lives lost. Investigations revealed Boeing knew about MCAS risk. Emails surfaced, engineers raised alarms, and one employee said it best, designed by clones, supervised by monkeys. It was no longer just about one flawed system, it was about a company that knew the risk and still chose silence. Now Boeing after MAX, a reputation in free fall. After the crashes, the 737 MAX was grounded globally. Boeing lost $20 billion and its once untouchable image. Even after the MAX returned, problems kept surfacing, which are firstly, cabin doors flying off mid-flight. Secondly, loose bolts on radar system. Thirdly, production delays. And the last thing is FAA fines. whistleblowers coming forward and sadly dying mysteriously. So in 2024, the FAA banned Boeing from expanding productions. Congress launched an investigation, airline cancelled orders, and for the first time the world asked, is Boeing still Boeing? Now let's come to the most recent tragedy, the Air India 787 Dreamliner crash in Ahmedabad. The preliminary report says human error, that fuel switches were accidentally turned off and that both engines shut down during takeoff. But here's the thing, just 4 weeks before this crash, the UK Civil Aviation Authority issued a safety directive on those exact same fuel control switches on Boeing 787. They flagged shutdown valve actuators as a safety hazard, ordered daily checks, cited a possible design flaw, but Boeing dismissed it. FAA said it's not a safety risk. Air India didn't inspect the locking mechanism because Boeing's 2018 advisory wasn't mandatory. So again the question is, can we really call this just human error, or are we witnessing history repeat itself? Because in 1978, Air India's Ashoka crash also happened right after takeoff due to engine shutdown. It had the same pattern, same result, same questions, but no accountability. And yes, we have done a full video on the Air India crash already with all technical breakdowns and investigation insights. You can find it on our channel. And now, well, importantly, what went wrong at Boeing? This wasn't a one-time failure, it was a cultural collapse. They stopped listening to engineers. They stopped asking hard questions, and they chased scale over soul, and passengers paid the price. Lastly, this isn't just about a plane company, it's about leadership, it's about the choices companies make when they grow too fast, and it's a lesson for every founder. Great companies aren't built by chasing shortcuts, they are built by thinking long term, by putting products and people first always. So the next time someone says pilot error, ask them, was it the pilot's mistake or the system's design? So this is Khatija signing off. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Free Press Journal, because truths like these aren't meant to be buried. They are meant to be told. See you in the next one.